Sometimes the people who smile beside your hospital bed are the same people praying you never leave it. The heart monitor screamed before Olivia Carter hit the polished hospital floor. Nurses turned instantly. A clipboard crashed somewhere down the maternity hallway. For one frozen second, nobody moved. Olivia lay curled beside the reception desk of St. Mary's Medical Center, both hands wrapped protectively around her 8-month pregnant belly, while pain tightened across her face like a storm rolling over the ocean. A single white tulip had fallen beside her purse, its stem bent sharply against the marble tiles. Standing 3 feet away in cream-colored heels, Vanessa Hale slowly lowered her foot and brushed invisible dust from her designer coat, as if nothing important had happened. "Oops," she whispered with a cold little smile that never reached her eyes. The fluorescent lights above the maternity wing hummed softly. Somewhere nearby, a newborn baby cried behind closed doors. Olivia tried to breathe through the sharp ache twisting beneath her ribs, but the pressure in her stomach kept building, wave after wave, stronger every second. "Ma'am, don't move," one of the nurses said quickly, kneeling beside her. Another nurse reached for the emergency phone mounted on the wall, but Vanessa stepped forward before anyone could speak again. "She slipped," Vanessa announced smoothly, folding her arms across her chest. "Pregnant women lose balance all the time." The hallway went silent. Everyone recognized Vanessa Hale. Her face appeared constantly beside Ethan Brooks in charity magazines, business galas, and social media headlines. America's favorite millionaire investor and his glamorous executive assistant. Nobody said the word affair out loud. They didn't have to. Olivia lifted trembling eyes toward her husband. Ethan Brooks stood near the elevator doors in a navy cashmere coat worth more than most people's rent. His expensive watch glinted beneath the hospital lights as he stared at his pregnant wife lying on the floor. But he didn't run to her. He didn't kneel beside her. He didn't even speak. And somehow that hurt Olivia more than anything else. 3 years earlier, Ethan had held her hand during every prenatal appointment after their first miscarriage. He used to kiss her forehead whenever she got nervous. He used to call her his miracle. Now his expression looked distant, almost irritated, like this entire scene was interrupting something more important. Vanessa noticed Olivia looking at him and smiled wider. "See?" she murmured softly enough for only Olivia to hear. "Even Ethan knows this baby won't fix your marriage." Another sharp pain rolled through Olivia's body. She pressed a shaking hand against her stomach and inhaled carefully while fear crawled up her spine. The baby kicked suddenly beneath her palm, fast and restless. Her blood pressures dropping. The nurse whispered urgently to her coworker, "Get Obi downstairs now." The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the corridor. Hospital staff appeared from every direction, their pale blue scrubs blurring beneath the cold overhead lights. Yet through all the chaos, Vanessa remained perfectly calm. She tilted her head slightly and glanced toward Ethan again. "Honestly," she sighed dramatically, "this whole thing is becoming exhausting." One of the older nurses stood slowly and faced Vanessa directly. "Ma'am, I need you to step back." Vanessa blinked in mock surprise. "Excuse me." "Step back," the nurse repeated firmly. Ethan finally moved then, but not toward Olivia. He walked quietly to Vanessa's side and rested a reassuring hand near her elbow. The gesture was small, almost invisible, but Olivia saw it, and the tiny movement shattered something inside her chest. Her throat tightened instantly. Around them, machines beeped steadily behind patient doors while winter rain tapped softly against the giant hospital windows overlooking downtown Chicago. St. Mary's was known as one of the most prestigious private hospitals in Illinois, funded partly through donations from men like Ethan Brooks. Men with power. Men who believed money could silence almost anything. Vanessa leaned closer to Ethan and lowered her voice. "This is exactly why I told you she was unstable." Olivia heard every word. So did the nurses. One young receptionist looked horrified but quickly lowered her eyes toward her computer screen. Nobody wanted trouble with Ethan Brooks. Not in this hospital. Not in this city. Suddenly, the elevator at the far end of the hallway dinged open with a sharp metallic sound that cut clean through the tension. 2 hospital board members stepped aside immediately. A gray-haired surgeon straightened his posture. Even the nurses went still for half a second. Dr. Raymond Carter had arrived. Rain hammered against the windows of St. Mary's Medical Center, while Ethan Brooks stood motionless in the doorway of room 814, staring at the man who had just taken control of everything. Dr. Raymond Carter did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The silence around him carried more authority than shouting ever could. Nurses passing through the hallway slowed instinctively when they saw him standing there beside Olivia's hospital bed, his dark suit untouched by the storm outside, silver hair perfectly neat beneath the sterile fluorescent lights. Ethan tried to recover first. Men like him always did. "Dr. Carter," he said carefully, forcing calm into his voice. "I think this situation is being misunderstood." Raymond looked at him without expression. "Your girlfriend assaulted my niece in a maternity wing." Ethan blinked once. That single word hit harder than he expected. Niece. Olivia closed her eyes slowly against the pillow as another monitor beeped beside her bed. Ethan looked toward her immediately. "Liv, why did you never tell me?" Her laugh came out soft and tired. "You stopped asking about my family a long time ago." The room went quiet again. Outside the glass walls of the hospital, downtown Chicago glowed beneath sheets of cold rain while distant thunder rolled across the skyline. Ethan stepped farther into the room despite Raymond's warning. "I did not know Vanessa would do something like this." Raymond folded his arms slowly. "You stood there and watched." Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because there was nothing to deny. The footage downstairs had removed every excuse. Every carefully polished layer of public image. Olivia shifted slightly against the bed as discomfort crossed her face. Instantly, two nurses entered the room to adjust her monitors. Ethan moved toward her instinctively, but Raymond stepped directly between them. "You heard me earlier," Raymond said quietly. "Leave." For the first time in years, Ethan Brooks looked genuinely uncertain. Billion-dollar negotiations never rattled him. Television interviews never rattled him. Angry investors never rattled him. But now he stood in a hospital room realizing money could not control this moment. Olivia finally looked at him again. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Did you know she hated the baby?" Ethan's face tightened. "No," she said, "losing the baby would make your life easier." Ethan looked stunned now. Truly stunned. And Olivia could see the exact second guilt finally reached him. But guilt arrived too late to matter. Raymond turned toward one of the nurses beside the door. "Security? Already notified, sir." Ethan's jaw tightened immediately. "You are having me removed from a hospital I helped fund." Raymond took one slow step closer. "You are confusing generosity with ownership." The words landed like ice water. Ethan stared at him for a long moment before finally looking back toward Olivia. She looked exhausted beneath the pale hospital lighting. Her blonde hair spread across the pillow while the steady rhythm of the baby's heartbeat filled the room around them. 8 years together. 2 years married. Countless interviews where Ethan called her the center of his world. Yet somehow another woman had walked into a maternity ward and made Olivia feel unwanted inside her own marriage. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. "I never wanted this." Olivia's fingers tightened around the blanket. "That is the problem, Ethan. You stopped wanting anything that included me." A sharp knock interrupted the room before he could answer. The door opened quickly, and a young legal assistant entered carrying a silver tablet against her chest. "Dr. Carter," she said nervously. "The board members are requesting an emergency conference upstairs." Raymond barely glanced away from Ethan. "Tell them I will be there in 10 minutes. The assistant hesitated. "There is something else, sir." She swallowed hard before continuing. The security footage leaked online. Everyone in the room froze. Ethan turned instantly. "What?" The assistant looked pale now. "Someone from the executive floor uploaded the hallway footage about 15 minutes ago. It already has over 2 million views." Olivia slowly opened her eyes wider. The nurse beside her muttered softly under her breath. Ethan grabbed the tablet from the assistant before anyone could stop him. The screen illuminated instantly with dozens of notifications exploding across financial news alerts, celebrity gossip pages, and social media headlines. Video of millionaire donor inside hospital scandal. Pregnant wife collapses after confrontation. Who is Vanessa Hale? Ethan scrolled downward faster. Then he saw it. The footage. Grainy security video showing Vanessa stepping toward Olivia while he stood only feet away doing nothing. His face drained of color. "Oh my God." Raymond watched him carefully. "Now the entire country gets to see who you really are when cameras are not supposed to matter." Ethan's phone suddenly began vibrating non-stop inside his pocket. investors, publicists, attorneys, board members. Every corner of the empire he spent 15 years building was starting to shake all at once. He ignored the calls, because another sound had begun filling the hospital room now. Olivia was crying silently beside the monitors, one trembling hand resting across her stomach while the baby's heartbeat continued steadily beneath the storm outside. And for the first time since Ethan Brooks became rich enough to buy almost anything he wanted, he realized there was one thing he could no longer fix. By midnight, St. Mary's Medical Center no longer felt like a hospital. It felt like the center of a national scandal. Television vans lined the street below the maternity wing, while camera flashes exploded through the rain outside like tiny lightning strikes. Reporters crowded beneath umbrellas near the emergency entrance, shouting questions every time security doors opened. Inside the executive conference room on the 22nd floor, tension sat heavier than the storm clouds over Chicago. Ethan Brooks stood near the wall-sized windows with his phone pressed against his ear while 3 separate calls waited on hold. "Pull the statements from tomorrow's investor summit," he snapped quietly. "No interviews. No comments until legal reviews everything." Another voice exploded through the speaker loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The stock already dropped 12% in under 2 hours. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. 12%. Nearly $400 million erased before midnight. Across the conference table, St. Mary's board members shifted nervously while financial advisors refreshed market screens every few seconds. Nobody cared about hospital donations anymore. Nobody cared about Ethan's philanthropy awards. America had seen the footage, and America had chosen its villain. Dr. Raymond Carter remained seated silently at the head of the table, reviewing printed reports beneath the soft golden light hanging overhead. He looked calm, too calm, the kind of calm powerful men develop after surviving decades of pressure. Ethan ended the call sharply and turned toward him. "You leaked the footage." Raymond did not even look up. "If I wanted revenge, Mr. Brooks, you would already be in handcuffs." The room went still again. One of the hospital attorneys cleared his throat nervously. At this moment, online response appears overwhelmingly supportive toward Mrs. Brooks. Ethan laughed once without humor. "Supportive?" The attorney swallowed hard before sliding a tablet across the table. "The hashtag #ProtectOlivia has over 8 million mentions already." Ethan glanced down. Thousands of comments flooded the screen faster than he could read them. Women sharing stories about betrayal. Nurses condemning Vanessa. Parents demanding criminal charges. Some posts focused on Olivia lying on the hospital floor, clutching her stomach, while Ethan stood frozen nearby. But others focused on something even worse. The expression on his face. Indifference. That was the image destroying him now. Not rage. Not cruelty. Just cold silence while his pregnant wife suffered publicly. Ethan looked away from the screen immediately. "Where is Vanessa?" Raymond answered calmly. "Being questioned by Chicago police downstairs." Ethan's eyes snapped toward him. "You called the police?" "A woman under medical observation was endangered inside my hospital." "What exactly did you expect me to call? Public relations?" Ethan dragged a hand across his face while thunder rattled faintly outside the glass windows. He had spent 15 years building Brooks Capital from a 2-room office into one of the largest private investment firms in the Midwest. Every interview, every handshake, every smiling magazine cover had created the image of Ethan Brooks, disciplined billionaire, devoted husband, future father. Now one security clip was tearing through all of it like fire through dry paper. Downstairs in room 814, Olivia could still hear helicopters circling outside above the storm. The soft television mounted in the corner played muted news coverage while nurses moved carefully around her bed, checking monitors every 15 minutes. Her body still ached from the fall, but the baby's heartbeat remained steady. Strong. That was the only thing keeping her breathing normally. A gentle knock interrupted the quiet room before the door opened again. This time it was not Ethan. A woman in a charcoal gray coat stepped inside, carrying a leather folder against her chest. Early 40s. Sharp eyes. Controlled posture. "Olivia?" the woman asked softly. Olivia nodded slightly. "I am Claire Bennett." Olivia recognized the name immediately. Chicago's most feared divorce attorney. Claire approached the bedside carefully. "Your uncle asked me to come." Olivia looked exhausted suddenly. "I do not want interviews." "Good," Claire replied calmly. Because I do not handle interviews. I handle damage. Olivia glanced toward the rain-covered windows. I never wanted any of this public. Claire opened her folder slowly. Unfortunately, your husband's reputation made privacy impossible the second that footage leaked. Olivia closed her eyes briefly. He used to love me. Claire's expression softened for the first time. Sometimes powerful men mistake comfort for love. Then they panic the moment comfort disappears. The room fell quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the baby monitor nearby. Claire sat beside the bed and lowered her voice. Olivia, I need to ask you something important. Olivia opened her eyes again. Okay. Claire slid several printed financial pages across the blanket carefully. Did you know Brooks Capital was originally funded through the Carter Family Trust? Olivia stared down at the paperwork in confusion. What? Claire nodded slowly. 3 years before Ethan became successful, your uncle quietly guaranteed his first investment loan using family assets. Olivia looked stunned now. Ethan never told me that. Because according to these records, Claire said quietly, he has spent years restructuring ownership to hide exactly how dependent he was on your family money. Olivia's breathing slowed. Outside her room, hospital staff hurried past while news alerts continued exploding across America. But inside that maternity suite, something far more dangerous was beginning to unfold. Not just betrayal, not just scandal, the collapse of a carefully built empire held together by secrets Ethan Brooks believed nobody would ever uncover. The rain finally stopped just before 3 in the morning, but the city outside St. Mary's Medical Center still pulsed with flashing lights and restless cameras. Chicago had not gone to sleep. Neither had Ethan Brooks. He stood alone inside a private waiting lounge on the executive floor staring at 3 muted television screens carrying his face across every national network in America. Financial tycoon under fire. Hospital footage sparks outrage. Pregnant wife scandal explodes online. The words repeated endlessly beneath his image while stock analysts debated whether Brooks Capital could survive the fallout. Ethan loosened his tie slowly and sank into a leather chair for the first time in hours. His phone vibrated again. Another investor. Another board member. Another person suddenly terrified of being associated with him. He ignored it. Across the room, his longtime public relations advisor Melissa Grant stood silently reviewing damage reports on her tablet. Even she looked shaken now. How bad? Ethan asked quietly without looking up. Melissa hesitated. 3 corporate partners suspended negotiations tonight. Ethan rubbed his forehead tiredly. And the board? Emergency meeting scheduled for 8 a.m. Another pause. Several members are discussing temporary removal until the investigation settles. Ethan laughed once under his breath. Temporary. He knew how corporate language worked. Temporary usually meant disposable. Melissa walked closer carefully. Ethan, there is something else. He looked up slowly. What now? She turned the tablet toward him. A photo filled the screen instantly. Olivia smiling beside him at a charity gala last winter, one hand resting gently over the small curve of her early pregnancy, while Ethan kissed her temple in front of cameras. Beneath the image were thousands of comments. She looked so happy. He never deserved her. She defended him for years. The contrast between that photograph and the hospital footage was destroying him faster than the scandal itself. America loved fallen heroes, but it loved betrayed women even more. Ethan stared at the screen longer this time. She used to look at me like I was safe, he said quietly. Melissa said nothing, because there was nothing professional left to say. Upstairs in the maternity suite, Olivia could not sleep either. The lights inside her room remained dim, while the city glowed faintly beyond the rain-streaked windows. Machines beeped softly beside her bed as she sat upright against the pillows staring at the financial documents Claire Bennett had left behind. Her hands trembled slightly turning each page. Trust transfers, loan guarantees, quiet signatures from Raymond Carter hidden beneath early investment filings. Every page revealed the same truth. Ethan Brooks had never built his empire alone. The Carter family money had protected him long before investors trusted his name. Olivia felt physically sick realizing he spent years pretending her family connections embarrassed him while secretly using them to rise higher. The door opened quietly again around 3:30. Raymond stepped inside carrying 2 cups of coffee, though neither looked strong enough to fix the exhaustion in his face tonight. Olivia glanced toward him weakly. You should be sleeping. Raymond handed her a warm cup of tea instead. So should you. He sat carefully beside the bed while silence settled gently between them. Olivia had always loved her uncle for this. He never rushed people toward emotion. He simply waited until the truth surfaced naturally. Finally, she whispered, "Did you know he was hiding all of this?" Raymond looked toward the city lights outside. "I suspected." Olivia lowered her eyes immediately. "Why did you not tell me?" "Because every time I warned you about him," Raymond replied softly, "you defended him. That hurt because it was true." Olivia remembered every family dinner where Raymond questioned Ethan's ambition. Every uncomfortable holiday conversation where her uncle noticed Ethan talking more about investors than marriage. She had protected Ethan every single time, defended him, trusted him, loved him. And now the entire country watched her humiliation replay online in slow motion. Olivia pressed trembling fingers against her eyes briefly. "I feel stupid." Raymond shook his head immediately. "No, you loved someone completely. That is not stupidity." Olivia laughed bitterly. "It feels like it." Before Raymond could answer, another knock interrupted the room. Claire Bennett entered quickly this time, her expression sharper than before. "I need both of you downstairs immediately." Raymond stood at once. "What happened?" Claire exhaled slowly. "Vanessa Hale just changed her statement." Olivia looked up instantly. "What do you mean?" Claire's eyes hardened. "She claims Ethan knew she was confronting you tonight before she arrived at the hospital." The room fell silent. Even the monitors seemed louder suddenly. Olivia stared at her in disbelief. "No," Claire stepped closer. "Chicago police recovered text messages from Vanessa's phone." Raymond's expression darkened immediately. "What messages?" Claire opened her folder and pulled out printed screenshots. Then she handed them directly to Olivia. Olivia's breath caught halfway through the first page. "Ethan, handle it tonight." "Vanessa, are you sure?" "Ethan, I cannot keep living like this." Another message appeared beneath it, sent less than an hour before Olivia collapsed in the hallway. "Vanessa, do not worry. After tonight, she will finally understand she already lost you." Olivia felt the room tilt slightly around her. Her baby kicked suddenly beneath the blanket, as if sensing the shift in her heartbeat. Raymond took the papers slowly from her trembling hands while Claire watched both of them carefully. Then Raymond spoke 4 words that changed everything. "Call the police commissioner." At 4:12 in the morning, the sound of cameras outside St. Mary's Medical Center became impossible to ignore. Helicopters hovered low above downtown Chicago while reporters crowded against police barricades under bright television lights reflecting off rain-soaked pavement. Across every major network in America, one question repeated endlessly. Did Ethan Brooks know what was going to happen inside that hospital hallway? Inside the maternity suite, Olivia Carter sat frozen against the hospital bed while the printed text messages still rested across her lap like pieces of broken glass. Her breathing stayed shallow, controlled, but her eyes no longer looked heartbroken. They looked stunned. Sometimes betrayal became so large the human mind stopped reacting emotionally just to survive it. Claire Bennett remained near the window, speaking quietly into her phone with legal teams downtown, while Dr. Raymond Carter stood motionless beside the television, watching Ethan's empire collapse in real time. Brooks' Capital stock dropped another 9% before international markets even opened. Investors were fleeing now. Fast. "The board wants him suspended before opening bell," Claire said finally, lowering the phone. Raymond nodded once. "They should." Olivia stared down at the messages again. "Handle it tonight." Such simple words. 4 ordinary syllables capable of destroying an entire life. She remembered Ethan saying almost the exact same thing years earlier while helping her paint their first apartment together. "Handle it tonight, Liv. We deserve one peaceful evening before work tomorrow." Back then his voice sounded warm. Safe. She used to think safety and love were the same thing. Another contraction tightened unexpectedly across her stomach. Olivia inhaled sharply and pressed a trembling hand beneath her belly while the monitor beside the bed accelerated instantly. Nurses rushed in within seconds. "Easy," one nurse whispered gently. "Try to breathe slowly for me." Olivia nodded weakly while fear crawled back into the room all over again. The baby was early. Too early. Raymond moved beside the bed immediately, concern replacing the cold authority on his face for the first time that night. "Is she all right?" The attending physician checked the monitor carefully before answering. Stress is triggering contractions again. We need to keep her calm. Calm. The word almost felt cruel now. Outside her room, the country debated her marriage, while inside her body, a child struggled against the weight of everything collapsing at once. Claire stepped closer carefully. Olivia, listen to me. Right now, your only job is protecting yourself and your daughter. Olivia laughed softly through tears. I thought that was Ethan's job. Nobody answered because nobody could. A sharp knock interrupted the room moments later before two Chicago police detectives entered carrying sealed evidence folders. Detective Maria Alvarez led the conversation immediately, her dark coat still damp from the storm outside. Mrs. Brooks, she said gently, I know this is difficult timing, but we need to verify several details regarding the messages recovered from Vanessa Hale's phone. Olivia nodded slowly. Okay. Alvarez glanced briefly toward Raymond and Claire before continuing. Miss Hale claims Mr. Brooks did not specifically instruct her to harm you. Olivia looked exhausted. But the detective opened her folder. But we recovered deleted voice recordings sent between them approximately 30 minutes before the incident. Claire's eyes narrowed immediately. Voice recordings? Alvarez nodded once. Our cyber division restored partial audio. Raymond folded his arms slowly. Play it. The detective hesitated briefly before pressing a button on her recorder. Static crackled softly through the hospital room first. Then Ethan's voice emerged low and tense beneath background city noise. I cannot keep dealing with Olivia falling apart every time we talk about the baby. Vanessa's voice answered almost playfully. Then maybe somebody needs to force her to accept reality. Silence followed for 2 long seconds. Then Ethan spoke again. Just make sure she understands it is over. The recording ended abruptly there. Olivia felt something inside her finally break. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like ice cracking beneath deep water. Raymond closed his eyes once while Claire looked genuinely furious now. Detective Alvarez lowered the recorder carefully. At this point, she said, Mr. Brooks is being considered part of an active investigation. Olivia stared toward the city lights outside her window. He still never thought this would happen. Claire looked at her carefully. What do you mean? Olivia's voice sounded distant now. Ethan always believed money cleaned things up eventually. The monitor beside her continued beeping steadily beneath the silence. Downstairs in the executive lounge, Ethan Brooks finally learned about the recovered recordings when 2 attorneys entered carrying pale expressions and updated legal briefings. Ethan stood instantly. What now? Neither man answered immediately. One finally handed him a printed warrant request from Chicago police. Ethan scanned the first page quickly before his face lost all color. No, he whispered. The attorney adjusted his glasses nervously. Ethan, you need to understand the situation has changed dramatically. Ethan looked up sharply. I never told Vanessa to hurt Olivia. That may not matter anymore. The second attorney lowered his voice carefully. Publicly encouraging confrontation with a pregnant woman before the incident creates serious exposure. Ethan stared toward the giant windows overlooking Chicago while sirens echoed faintly below. For the first time since this nightmare began, he finally understood something terrifying. The scandal was no longer about saving his reputation. It was about whether he was about to lose everything. By sunrise, the streets outside St. Mary's Medical Center looked like the scene of a political scandal instead of a maternity ward. Satellite trucks crowded every corner, while reporters wrapped in heavy coats delivered live updates beneath the pale gray Chicago sky. Across social media, one clip played millions of times every hour. Olivia Carter collapsing onto the hospital floor while Ethan Brooks stood frozen nearby. People slowed the footage down frame by frame now, studying his expression like evidence in a murder trial. Some called him heartless. Others called him weak. But the most damaging accusation spreading online was much simpler. He never loved her at all. Inside the hospital, the air felt heavy with exhaustion and caffeine. Nurses whispered in corners. Security guards doubled shifts. Even senior surgeons checked headlines between surgeries. St. Mary's had become the center of the biggest public scandal in America overnight. And somewhere inside the building, Olivia sat quietly listening to her baby's heartbeat while her marriage collapsed on national television. The early morning sunlight barely reached room 814 through thick rain clouds as Claire Bennett reviewed legal documents across the small couch near the window. Olivia remained silent in bed, pale beneath the soft hospital lighting, while another contraction tightened briefly through her body before fading again. The doctors called them stress contractions now. Not labor. Yet. But every hour of emotional pressure pushed her closer to danger. Raymond Carter entered carrying fresh medical updates just after 7 a.m. His face looked harder this morning. More resolved. "The baby is stable," he said quietly. Olivia nodded faintly. Stable. The word had become the only thing keeping her together. Claire closed her folder slowly. Ethan's board meeting started 15 minutes ago. Raymond set the papers down beside Olivia carefully. Several directors already resigned publicly overnight. Olivia stared toward the television mounted silently across the room. Ethan's face filled the screen again beneath another headline. Brooks Capital in crisis. She used to feel proud seeing him on television. She remembered sitting beside him years ago in their tiny first apartment while he practiced speeches in front of the bathroom mirror before his first investor conference. Back then, Ethan looked nervous before interviews. Human. She used to kiss his cheek and tell him he would do great things someday. Neither of them understood the cost of those great things yet. A soft knock interrupted the room before Detective Alvarez stepped inside once more, this time carrying another sealed evidence folder. Her expression remained professional, but noticeably more serious now. "Mrs. Brooks," she said gently, "there have been new developments." Claire immediately stood. "What kind of developments?" Alvarez exhaled carefully. Financial investigators reviewed Brooks Capital Communications overnight. Raymond's eyes narrowed slightly. "And?" The detective opened her folder. "We discovered Ethan Brooks attempted to transfer $38 million into an offshore account approximately 2 hours after the hospital incident." The room fell silent. Olivia blinked slowly. "What?" Alvarez nodded once. "The transfer was frozen before completion due to emergency legal restrictions." Claire's voice sharpened instantly. "He was trying to move assets before divorce proceedings." "Possibly," Alvarez replied. "But there is more." She slid several printed emails onto the hospital bed carefully. "We also recovered internal company messages discussing damage control strategies involving Mrs. Brooks." Olivia looked down at the pages weakly. One sentence immediately caught her attention. "If Olivia signs a non-disclosure agreement quickly, media attention should fade within weeks." Another line beneath it felt even colder. "Protect Ethan's image at all costs before paternity coverage becomes central narrative." Olivia's fingers tightened around the papers. "Paternity." Alvarez nodded carefully. "Certain executives believed your pregnancy was becoming more valuable publicly than privately." Olivia stared at her in confusion. Claire looked furious now. They treated her unborn child like branding material. Raymond turned away briefly toward the window, his jaw tightening visibly. Olivia felt suddenly sick again. Not because of Ethan alone anymore. Because an entire world around him viewed family like public relations strategy. Her marriage, her pregnancy, her pain, all reduced to financial calculations in conference rooms filled with men wearing expensive suits. The baby kicked suddenly beneath her hand, sharp and strong. Olivia closed her eyes instantly as emotion flooded through her chest all over again. "I used to think Ethan was different from people like that," she whispered softly. Nobody answered because nobody could lie to her anymore. Downstairs, the executive boardroom of Brooks Capital looked nothing like victory now. Ethan sat alone at the far end of a polished conference table while directors avoided direct eye contact. The giant windows behind him overlooked Chicago's financial district where reporters already crowded the sidewalks below waiting for statements. One board member cleared his throat carefully. "Ethan, after reviewing current exposure, the board voted unanimously this morning." Ethan already knew. He could hear it in the man's voice before the words arrived. "You are being placed on indefinite administrative leave effective immediately." Silence followed. Ethan looked around the room slowly at people who once toasted his success beside champagne glasses and magazine covers. Nobody defended him now. Nobody even looked sorry. Finally, Ethan spoke quietly. "I built this company." The chairman lowered his eyes briefly. "And now you are threatening to destroy it." Ethan laughed once under his breath. "Cold. Empty." "No," he said softly. "I already destroyed it the moment I stopped protecting the only person who actually loved me." The first arrest happened at exactly 9:17 that morning. Every major network in America carried it live. Vanessa Hale emerged from the side entrance of St. Mary's Medical Center, surrounded by Chicago police officers, while camera shutters exploded like fireworks beneath the cloudy morning sky. She wore oversized sunglasses and a cream wool coat pulled tightly around her shoulders, but nothing could hide the panic in her face anymore. Reporters shouted questions from behind barricades. Did Ethan Brooks tell you to confront Olivia? Did you attack a pregnant woman intentionally? Were you promised money? Vanessa lowered her head and kept walking until one final question stopped her for half a second. Did he ever actually love you? That was the moment America saw the truth. Not arrogance. Not confidence. Just humiliation. Vanessa climbed into the police vehicle without answering, while millions of viewers watched her disappear behind dark-tinted glass. Upstairs in room 814, the muted television replayed the footage over and over while Olivia Carter sat motionless against her hospital pillows. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee while morning light pushed weakly through heavy clouds outside the windows. Claire Bennett lowered the television volume quietly. You should not be watching this. Olivia kept her eyes on the screen anyway. I spent 2 years pretending not to see things I should have noticed. Her voice sounded calmer now. Not stronger, just emptier. Raymond Carter stood near the doorway reviewing overnight legal filings while nurses moved carefully around the room, changing 4 bags and monitoring contractions that still came unpredictably every 30 or 40 minutes. The baby remained stable. That single sentence had become everyone's prayer. Claire sat beside the bed and opened another folder slowly. I need to prepare you for what happens next. Olivia looked down at her hands. Divorce? Claire nodded once. And financial war. Raymond finally looked up from his papers. Brooks' capital attorneys already contacted 3 federal judges trying to delay asset freezes. Olivia blinked slowly. He is still protecting money? Claire's expression hardened slightly. Men like Ethan do not separate identity from power. Losing money feels like losing oxygen. The room fell quiet except for the steady heartbeat monitor beside Olivia's bed. She remembered Ethan staying awake beside her years ago after their first miscarriage, holding her hand until sunrise because she could not stop crying. He used to whisper that family mattered more than business, more than reputation, more than anything. Somewhere along the way, he stopped believing his own promises. A soft knock interrupted the room before Detective Alvarez entered again, carrying a small evidence envelope. This time her expression looked almost sympathetic. Mrs. Brooks, she said gently, we recovered something else from Miss Hale's apartment. Claire immediately straightened. What? Alvarez handed the envelope carefully to Olivia. Inside was a folded ultrasound photograph. Olivia recognized it instantly. Her 20-week scan. The picture Ethan framed in his office beside a handwritten note that once read, Daddy cannot wait to meet you. Olivia stared at the image in confusion. Why would Vanessa have this? Alvarez exchanged a brief look with Claire before answering carefully. Because according to recovered messages, Ethan gave it to her. Olivia stopped breathing for one terrible second. The room suddenly felt colder. Larger. Far away. Claire spoke first. When Alvarez opened her notebook quietly. Approximately 3 weeks ago. Olivia looked down at the tiny ultrasound image shaking in her hands while another memory returned without warning. 3 weeks ago, Ethan claimed he missed an anniversary dinner because of emergency investor meetings in New York. Olivia spent that night alone in their penthouse eating cold pasta while watching the rain outside the windows. Ethan called around midnight apologizing softly. She remembered believing him completely. Now she pictured Vanessa holding this same ultrasound photo while Olivia waited alone at home. Something inside her finally went still after that. Not heartbreak. Not anger. Acceptance. The most dangerous emotion of all. Downstairs across town, Brooks' Capital headquarters looked like a sinking ship. Employees hurried through marble lobbies, avoiding reporters camped outside every entrance, while stock tickers bled red across giant financial screens. Ethan Brooks sat alone inside his office, staring at the skyline he once believed belonged to him. The board removed his executive access an hour earlier. His assistant resigned publicly on social media. Investors refused his calls now. Even his own mother released a statement condemning all behavior that endangered an innocent child. Ethan laughed softly when he read it. Public survival always came first in wealthy families. His office door opened suddenly. Melissa Grant stepped inside, carrying another tablet. Her face looked pale. You need to see this. Ethan barely moved anymore. What now? Melissa turned the screen toward him. It showed Olivia leaving the hospital hallway months earlier during a charity event, smiling quietly while helping a disabled little girl into a wheelchair after cameras already stopped filming. Someone online paired that footage beside the security clip from St. Mary's. The contrast devastated people. One woman caring for strangers without attention. One man abandoning his own wife publicly. The video already passed 60 million views. Ethan stared silently at the screen while comments flooded downward faster than he could read them. Then his phone buzzed once beside the desk. Claire Bennett. Ethan answered immediately. Claire. Her voice sounded cold as winter glass. Olivia wants full custody. Ethan closed his eyes slowly. Please let me talk to her. A pause followed. Then Claire spoke 4 words that finally broke him completely. She does not miss you anymore. 48 hours after the footage from St. Mary's Medical Center shattered across the internet, Olivia Carter finally went into labor. The contractions started just after midnight while cold wind rattled the windows above downtown Chicago. One moment, she sat quietly reading medical forms beneath dim hospital lights. The next, pain tightened sharply across her stomach hard enough to steal her breath completely. The heart monitor accelerated instantly. Nurses rushed into the room. Machines beeped louder. The calm rhythm that had filled room 814 for 2 days disappeared all at once beneath controlled medical urgency. Okay, Olivia, stay with me, the attending physician said gently while checking the monitor. Your daughter is coming early. Raymond Carter appeared seconds later, already dressed in surgical scrubs beneath his dark overcoat, his face tight with concern but steady with experience. Outside the maternity floor, security guards blocked hallways from reporters who somehow learned labor had started before half the hospital staff even knew. Every network in America wanted the same thing now. The birth of Ethan Brooks's child. The final chapter of a scandal the country could not stop watching. Inside the delivery suite, Olivia barely noticed any of it anymore. Sweat dampened strands of blonde hair against her forehead, while contractions rolled through her body one after another beneath bright surgical lights. Nurses adjusted equipment carefully around her bed, while soft instructions filled the room between monitor sounds. Breathe slowly. Good. Again. Somewhere beyond the walls of the hospital, Ethan Brooks sat alone in the back seat of a black SUV parked 3 blocks away because hospital security refused to let him inside. Rain tapped softly against the tinted windows while television reporters crowded nearby sidewalks, discussing his downfall in live broadcasts. Ethan stared at his phone for nearly 20 minutes before finally sending one message to Claire Bennett. Please tell Olivia I am here. The response arrived less than a minute later. She knows. Nothing else followed. Ethan lowered the phone slowly into his lap, while exhaustion settled deeper into his face than any financial collapse ever could. He had lost his company, lost his reputation, lost control of his fortune. But none of it felt real until tonight. Tonight his daughter would enter the world without him beside her mother. And he knew he deserved it. Back upstairs, another contraction tore through Olivia hard enough to force tears into her eyes. Raymond stood near her shoulder now, while nurses prepared emergency equipment nearby, in case the premature delivery became dangerous. You are doing well, he told her quietly. Olivia laughed weakly through pain. I do not feel like I am. Raymond squeezed her hand gently. That is usually how strength feels while it is happening. The room blurred slightly through exhaustion and emotion. Olivia remembered Ethan holding her after their first miscarriage years ago, whispering promises into her hair about the family they would someday have together. She remembered how badly he wanted this child once. Or at least she thought he did. Another sharp wave of pain interrupted the memory completely. The monitors reacted instantly. Doctor, heart rate spike, one nurse warned softly. Raymond stepped closer. Olivia, look at me. She forced trembling eyes toward him. You are safe here. Your daughter is safe here. Stay with me. Outside the room, Claire Bennett stood beside 2 Chicago police detectives reviewing new legal filings while reporters screamed questions from behind hospital barricades downstairs. Vanessa Hale officially accepted a plea agreement that afternoon. Brooks Capital announced permanent restructuring under emergency leadership. Ethan's personal net worth dropped nearly 60% in under 3 days. America loved dramatic endings. But none of those headlines mattered inside the delivery suite where Olivia fought simply to bring her child safely into the world. Hours passed beneath fluorescent lights and quiet medical commands until finally, just before sunrise, a new sound filled the room. A baby crying. Sharp, small, alive. Everyone froze for one beautiful second before relief swept through the room all at once. Nurses smiled openly. One physician removed his glasses just to wipe his eyes briefly. Olivia collapsed backward against the pillows, trembling with exhaustion, while tears slid silently down both cheeks. 7 pounds even, the nurse whispered softly. Healthy baby girl. The tiny infant was wrapped carefully in a pale pink blanket before being placed gently against Olivia's chest. The baby's cries softened almost instantly beneath her mother's heartbeat. Olivia stared down at her daughter through blurred vision, while early morning sunlight finally pushed through storm clouds outside the windows of Chicago. For the first time in days, the room felt quiet, peaceful, real. Raymond stood nearby watching both of them with tears shining openly in his eyes now. She has your mother's eyes, he whispered. Olivia smiled faintly down at the little girl sleeping against her chest. Her name is Grace. Downstairs across the street, Ethan Brooks sat inside his parked SUV when his phone vibrated one final time. A single photograph appeared from Claire Bennett. Olivia holding their newborn daughter beneath soft hospital light, while exhaustion and peace rested side by side across her face. Ethan stared at the image for a long time without breathing. Then another message arrived beneath it. Mother and baby are healthy. Ethan closed his eyes slowly as emotion finally overwhelmed whatever remained of the man he used to be. Because for the first time since all of this began, he understood the cruelest part of losing Olivia Carter was not watching her hate him. It was watching her learn how peaceful life became once she no longer needed him at all. 3 months later, the first snow of winter fell quietly across downtown Chicago while Olivia Carter stood beside the nursery window, holding her daughter against her chest. Grace slept peacefully beneath a pale pink knit blanket, completely unaware that her birth had become one of the most talked about stories in America. The world outside eventually moved on to newer scandals, newer headlines, newer disasters. But inside Olivia's penthouse apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, silence finally felt safe again. Soft piano music drifted through the living room, while morning sunlight reflected off fresh snow outside the glass windows. There were no reporters downstairs anymore. No helicopters above the building. No emergency phone calls in the middle of the night. Just peace. Real peace. The kind Olivia almost forgot existed. She gently rocked Grace in her arms while tiny breaths warmed her shoulder. The baby had Ethan's dark eyes. Sometimes that still hurt. Other times it reminded Olivia that beautiful things could survive even broken people. A soft knock sounded near the apartment entrance before Raymond Carter stepped inside, carrying coffee and a stuffed teddy bear nearly bigger than the baby herself. Spoiling her already? Olivia asked softly with the first genuine smile she had worn in months. Raymond shrugged calmly. I waited 60 years to become the dramatic uncle in a billionaire scandal. Let me enjoy it. Olivia laughed quietly. Even now the sound surprised her sometimes. For weeks after leaving St. Mary's Medical Center, she barely recognized herself without fear living permanently in her chest. Therapy helped. Sleep helped. Distance helped most of all. Claire Bennett finalized the divorce 6 weeks earlier under full media blackout. Olivia received primary custody of Grace along with controlling shares connected to the original Carter Trust investments inside Brooks Capital. Ironically, the same empire Ethan nearly sacrificed his marriage to protect now legally belonged mostly to the woman he underestimated. Olivia never celebrated that part publicly. She never gave interviews, never wrote social media posts, never sold her story to magazines offering millions for exclusive details. She simply disappeared from the noise. And somehow that silence made the public respect her even more. Raymond placed the coffee down gently before glancing toward the muted television across the living room. Financial news played quietly beneath scrolling headlines about another restructuring inside Brooks Capital. Ethan's name appeared only briefly now, not as a billionaire visionary, not as a celebrity investor, just another former executive under investigation for financial misconduct tied to offshore accounts and shareholder deception. The world moved on quickly when powerful men stopped being useful. Have you heard from him? Raymond asked carefully. Olivia looked down at Grace sleeping against her chest. Every week. Raymond nodded once. Ethan still sent letters because Olivia blocked every phone number connected to him months ago. Some letters apologized. Some begged. Some simply described memories from happier years when they still believed love alone could survive ambition. Olivia read every letter once, then placed them quietly into a locked drawer without answering. Not out of cruelty, out of acceptance. Certain doors closed so softly people never realized the sound they heard was permanent. Later that afternoon, snow continued falling gently across Chicago while Ethan Brooks sat alone inside a much smaller office 30 blocks away, reviewing legal settlement documents beneath harsh fluorescent lights. Brooks' capital no longer belonged to him. Most of his wealth disappeared through investigations, lawsuits, and emergency asset divisions. Several former friends publicly distanced themselves from him. Vanessa Hale accepted probation through cooperation agreements and vanished from public life entirely. The glamorous world Ethan once ruled collapsed faster than he ever thought possible. Yet somehow losing money never haunted him the way losing Olivia did. A framed photograph rested near the edge of his desk now. Olivia was asleep in a hospital chair 2 days after Grace was born, the baby resting safely against her chest beneath warm morning light. Ethan stared at the picture longer than the paperwork in front of him most days. Because the photograph captured the exact moment, he understood something too late. Olivia looked peaceful without him. His assistant knocked carefully before entering. "Mr. Brooks, your 3 o'clock meeting is here." Ethan glanced once toward the snowy skyline outside his office window before standing slowly. "Send them in." The assistant hesitated briefly near the door. "Sir, your ex-wife's interview is on television tonight." Ethan looked up immediately. "Interview?" "Not really," she clarified softly. "It is a charity feature about women's maternal health programs." She donated anonymously to St. Mary's. Ethan sat back down slowly after she left. Of course Olivia would do something like that. Even after everything, she still used pain to protect other people instead of destroying them. That was always the difference between them. That evening, Olivia appeared on television for less than 4 minutes, standing quietly inside the newly renovated maternal recovery wing at St. Mary's Medical Center. She wore a simple cream sweater with Grace resting comfortably against her shoulder while reporters asked careful questions about the donation. Olivia answered politely but briefly. Then one reporter asked the question millions of viewers still wanted answered. After everything that happened, the woman asked softly, "Do you hate Ethan Brooks?" The room became completely silent. Olivia adjusted Grace's blanket gently before answering. "No," the reporter looked surprised. "Why not?" Olivia glanced down at her daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. Then she smiled faintly toward the cameras. "Because some people punish themselves far more completely than revenge ever could."